Dave Poulin joins us from TSN. There's a lot of games that we could talk about with him. Hey, Poulin, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. Good to be back with you.
It is good. Good to chat hockey.
Absolutely great.
Every time I go by 4 Mile Road, I think of you every time, by the way, so congratulations. That created quite a stir around here, too, by the way. Dave, if you've commented on the Tim Peel situation, I haven't seen it yet. Would you mind giving me your thoughts on the firing/suspension of the veteran referee?
Really, really unfortunate. I'm immersed in it. I can't get away from it. And I think, a lot of people are reaching out to me, like referees are, former referees, because I had a great relationship with a number of them. And I've seen a number of them as of late. And, it's really a lousy way to go out for Tim Peel. It really is. I'm not sure whether you knew this part, but he actually, I think, was set to retire last year. And then they talked him into coming back to help with the young guys because their group was young. And the whole game management part of it, I mean, come on, like that's new, and are you familiar with scoutingtherefs.com, the website?
I've heard of it. I don't go to it, but I've heard of it. Yeah.
Okay. You should go to it. You should go to it. It's a fascinating website. I go to it before every game that I'm broadcasting, and it gives you the details on every referee and linesman. But when I say details, it gives you the percent of penalties they call on the home team, what each team's record is with that referee, how they break down. And so when you look at it and you say, okay, he calls 48% of the penalties on the home team, he calls 49%, he calls 48%, he calls 49%, he calls 50%. There's no 20% in there. There's no 30% in there. I mean, they call the game pretty closely, but I would argue that that's very often not the referees. That's the players, and the players dictate the way the game is played because of the way the referee starts reffing the game. And I knew going into a game what a Kerry Fraser game looked like. I knew what an Andy Van Helmen game looked like. I mean, yes, maybe I paid a little more attention because I was a captain, but I knew what Billy McCreary was going to ref a game like. But so did we as a team. And we wanted consistency from start to finish in the game. And we wanted consistency from game to game with those guys. Ron Fournier was different from Danny Morrell. They were all different, but you knew what you were going to get, and maybe you played accordingly. And you knew going in, if Andy Van Helmen was going to let you get away with a little more, you were going to try a little more. But if you knew that somebody else was absolutely not going to, you didn't try it. And so this has all been, I've got so many thoughts running through my head on this one. I hate to see the way Tim Peel's career is ending. He should get the last game with, his favorite co-referee and the favorite linesman, that little tradition they've built of doing and how to gracefully let these guys exit the game. But, what he said was very unfortunate. And I sort of have a theory on that too, Rod. I think he said that to one of the two young linesmen in the game. So another benefit of going to this website is, it gives you each person's experience. Well, the two linesmen reffing that game, Kelly Sutherland was the other ref, and, he's another 1,300 game guy. But the two linesmen were both really young kids. I think one had 25 games and one had a little over 100 games. And I think when he called that penalty, he skated by the other linesman, if you watch, and said what he did sort of to fill him in on that, because you heard a response, yeah, I got it. And maybe he was already defending his own call to himself. Like, boy, that was a soft call. And, so there's so many factors that come into play here. But the bottom line is the way it was handled, the way it ended. Yeah, come on. I mean.
What? Well, I know. This is amazing, by the way. I don't know if everybody else is enjoying it, but I sure am. So that's all that matters. And I think you are too. But I mean, our technical producer, Ryan, said yesterday, if there's a crowd in the rink, nobody even hears this. Another thing that COVID's done. You know what I mean? Right. It would have drowned out what the referee was saying. But Lauren Mulliken, when he was coaching the Pats, used to have me track which refs called which minors, because it was a four-man system then. So if it was Darren Dupont and he called a lot of stick infractions, Lauren's like, watch the sticks tonight, guys, because this ref's going to call it. Like, it's not freaking new. And are we supposed to pretend that makeup calls haven't been around for 100 years? That's what I've been saying for 24 hours. How does the NHL conduct itself moving forward, Dave? That's my question here.
Well, Let me interject one thing here. Is it a makeup call because of a call you've made? Or is it because of a call the guy at the other end has made? Because now you're dealing with two refs. And so are you compensating now? It's a two-man team. And are you compensating for a call that maybe you made? Because I watched, there'd been one call up to that point in that game. It was the other referee that made the call. And it was on a Detroit player. And it was on a Nashville player driving the net, who was the same player who was called by Tim Peel. So, and I'll tell you one thing, another point here, and you got me going on these guys. Rod, I'll tell you what, but you have to have relationships with these guys. And the day they took the names off the referee sweaters, I was like, well, they have names, they have personalities, and now they're anonymous because they don't have names on their jerseys. And we were at a golf tournament, and somebody asked, I was standing in the area, and somebody asked Billy McCreary about me as a player and how I was to deal with. And he said, he drove me nuts. He said, because I would call a penalty on the Flyers, and he'd skate up beside me, and the crowd would be going crazy, and he wouldn't really look at me, and he'd kind of be smiling, and he'd be taking some tape off his stick, and he'd be just giving it to me. And he'd be calling me every name in the book, but he did it with a smile on his face, and he really wasn't looking at me, so I couldn't give him a penalty. And he said it was such an effective way of communicating, and we had a relationship, and we knew it, and you were allowed to have relationships. And why is Wes McCauley considered one of the best referees? Because he's got a personality, and everybody knows his name, and he's got relationships with the players. You can see it.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Well, and that you get to have relationships, good relationships and bad relationships. But I remember when they first brought in the four-person crew, I was coaching the Regina Pats in an intra-squad game. They had just started this, and I said to the guy at the red line, I said, you just missed this infraction. He goes, well, not my responsibility. It's that ref's call. And I'm like,
here we go.
Right, here we go. You're going to blame it on the other guy. I'm pretty sure you're responsible for everything on the ice. But anyways, that's...
and I know some of my guys have said, call the rule book the way it is. Some of, my fellow TSN guys have said, call the rule book the way it is. Well, that's fine. You and I are the refs tonight. How do you see a hook versus how I see a hook? Like, calling the rule book the way it is isn't as simple as that. It's just not. A trip inside, did he really trip? Did he toe pick? How much was the stick involved? If a penalty ranges from 1 to 5, and both of us call every 4 and 5, you call the 3s, I call some of the 3s, I never call the 2s and 1s, you call some of the 3s and some of the 2s, there's so much subjectivity in it. It's not a robot making the calls.
No, but we can agree they do an outstanding job. And it's an
outstanding job.
Yeah, they do. That's what's kind of been lost in this too, Dave. These are the best referees in the world. No question.
They're really good at what they do.
We moving on?
I you know what? I got so many thoughts going through my head on this one because it is an incredibly hard job, and it's so important. And people get fired because of calls that are made. There might be 2 bad calls against a team and the coach gets fired. You're like, okay, well, they were bad calls. Are you allowed to say that? You're the general manager that just fired you. So
I know.
They're a necessary part of the game. They're a fabric of the game. They always will be. And where does the league go from there? I think was a question you were starting to ask me when I interrupted you again, because this is a passionate subject for me. Yes, try and tighten everything up. Yes, and really have them keep doing what they're doing. I mean, it's their boss, it's their leader that they take their instructions from, and you keep grinding it down and keep going and try and get better, just like the players are.
But I got a million thoughts too. My point is that the makeup call's been around for 100 years. So what are we going to stop calling it?
Please.
Are we going to stop calling it?
Not a chance.
Is that what we're... No, you can't change what's baked into it. And they're talking about betting and that this influences the outcome of games. No, it doesn't. It's never influenced the outcome of games. Everybody's fine with makeup calls. We know when you're getting when we're getting one, we're getting one. We're owed one. Whatever. We don't fight it. Enough of that, because I'm getting worked up, and I think you are too. What's burning in my mind, and I hope this isn't an unfair question, but I had the Flames picked number 1 in Canada this year. and look where they are. And I'm just thinking, are they the most disappointing team in the NHL? We kind of knew Buffalo was going to be bad. We knew Detroit was going to be bad. Mm-hmm. Everybody had Ottawa picked for 7th. But this Flames thing doesn't compute to me.
I had them picked at 5. I didn't see it. Or maybe I did see it. Maybe I saw it ahead of it. Something doesn't work up front there. Something just doesn't work. I mean, they've changed out their D. They brought in the new goaltender. And sometimes when you bring in a new goaltender like that, you know, the core group says, well, there's so much fuss about our goaltending. And now we've got Jacob Markstrom. So if they went out and spent that much money on a goaltender and it was that important to them, it really wasn't us. It was the goaltending that was the issue. And, you know, they brought a better goaltender in. It hasn't cured all. There's something that doesn't work with that mix up front. And it's not, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work with the combination they have. And you know, and they thought they've changed all around it, but they haven't changed it. And I guess you could say, well, they made, you know, the Elias Lindholm.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yep. Lindholm. Yeah. I've got Pedersen in my mind. They made that move, and that's a significant move, but they played for 5 coaches now. And even when they made the coaching change, I'm not a fan of in-season coaching changes because I think it lets the players off the hook. And that may sound funny coming from a former player, but I didn't want to let teammates off the hook either and have someone say, oh, thank God they've got new coaching here because it's not our fault. You know, and that's the same thing I'm saying about the goaltender is, well, they changed the goaltender because they know it wasn't our fault. Well, it's someone's fault. And 5 coaches they've played for. And think of the personalities from Bob Hartley. I mean, and you know, you think of rolling through the personalities, Bill Peters and Jeff Ward
most recently, of course. Yeah.
You know, yeah. And so you've had different personalities. That's not the point. Gulletson was in there as well. And so you've had these different personalities. Hasn't worked. So change is obviously brewing, but I did have them 5th. And for me, Rod, it came down to Edmonton and Calgary. I thought were going to be 4-5, and I chose the 2 superstars over the new goaltender. That's how I made my final decision. I still think Montreal is going to be okay. 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, if you said there'd be 3 teams sitting with 42 points right now, we would have said, really? How did that happen? You know, wasn't Toronto 10 points ahead at one point, or, you know, and Edmonton looked like they were imploding when Toronto went through there. And maybe that was their wake-up call. In Montreal, I still think is going to be fine, although they haven't won 2 games in a row since, I think, the 2nd of February. Now they've got a whole different thing to deal with this, you know,
COVID,
compaction of the schedule that they'll have, because they're going to be really, really compressed through this stretch now.
Well, then,
but I think they might have the depth to get through.
If that's true, then the Flames, Canucks, and Sens all miss the playoffs, and wait and see how that goes over in those markets. We got to roll, Poulin. Love the chat as always. We're watching all the time. Thanks for this, and enjoy the games tonight.
Always a pleasure. Enjoy your day.
Thanks, bud. TSN's Dave Poulin joining us from Toronto.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of the Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.